The first thing about our business is the history of it. It was founded by my father back in about 1947 as a small electrical engineering business which specialised in hi-fi, that's like audio and so on. That turned not out to be perhaps such a successful enterprise, so my father moved into the manufacture of transformers, little transformers as you might use in appliances. From that, transformers often need things that work with them, and so battery chargers, like small battery chargers and perhaps domestic appliances, was something that we made at that time, along with more complex electronic equipment and special test equipment. I joined the firm in about 1976, and I'm an electrical engineer by profession, and I'd never been interested in audio, but I'm more of a power kind of engineer. So we then moved more and more to battery chargers, which is what we make, and when I say a battery charger, I don't mean something you buy from Target, something that might be the size of a fridge or two fridges, weighing maybe 600 kilos, that's used in a power station or it could be used on a ship or whatever. We focused more and more on specialised electrical equipment, and that was a good path. We found that niche that we were successful in. We started to export more. So our business now is the manufacture of sort of complex electrical equipment, which is handmade or close to handmade, in short runs, expensive, in every sort of big project around Australia, many overseas projects, many interesting places that they go to too. And I've been very lucky that I've been to a lot of Australia to see equipment. Sometimes it's not working, that's not quite so lucky, but I've certainly had the pleasure of working in a lot of remote areas. They're very interesting, and overseas also in remote areas, on oil platforms, flying in helicopters, all kinds of stuff. So precision electrical engineers make a wide range of stuff and enjoy what we do. That's basically our business. I'm an engineer and I have a group of engineer friends, and we've often talked about, why did you do this? It's not only curious about something, it's also you actually want it to work. A scientist might be curious about something, and like if you look at a pen, you think, oh, it's a pen, but have a look at it. Why does that work the way it does? How did they make that plastic do that? What about the ball? Why does it write that way? And there is a whole lot you can drill in infinitely and with a great deal of pleasure to find out why something works. Now, a scientist will say, okay, well, why does ink come out and flow so nicely? An engineer is going to say, how can I make that work better, maybe cheaper, more efficient, and so on. All of my friends started off being curious about something. Train sets, Meccano, Lego, any of these sort of physical things. And I think once you have a curiosity for that, and a curiosity, why does something work and how can you make it work better, or how can you understand it, then you're on your way to what engineering is. The engineering is a broad field. I mean, I'm an electrical engineer, but there are chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, materials engineers, and so on. Everybody has that, I think the curiosity and the desire to make something, though, is a common thing for all engineers. We're lucky, from my point of view as an electrical engineer, that it involves a great deal of rather beautiful mathematics. And when you test something and look at something, you can see the waveform in it just like in a school book. Like it works perfectly. The sine wave looks like this and the phase angle looks like that. And you can say, 30 years ago they taught me about that and now I understand it. I think in a business like ours, which is a small business, one of the most important things is culture. So people have got to say, yeah, I fit in this organisation, I can work in a small organisation. So you really want to have, I think, more than being someone who's incredibly brilliant, who could be hard to get along with, you need someone to say, hey, I can work with this guy here, he's tall, this guy here short and fat, you know, this guy's not born in Australia, this guy is. To be able to be adaptable to a range of diversity and to be able to approach problems and say, I can solve this, and if I can't solve it, I'll ask someone and they will be able to solve it. Not to say, oh, this is so overwhelming that I can't do it at all, but to realise every problem has an answer, and if it doesn't have an answer, there's some other way that something can be negotiated about. We really have to know how to work together. That's the first thing. So culture is important. The next thing is you've got to actually be interested in what you're doing. This is not, you know, you want to have an interest and an understanding that, in our case, an electrician apprentice, speaking as an electrical engineer, is going to say, that is interesting, how can I make it nice, how can I make it good, you know, what can I learn about this when I've finished with it, what could I do better, and so on. So you've got to always be looking for change and so on. You've got to have persistence. You have to have an inquiring mind. You have to be able to listen to things, follow instructions in the sense an instruction is a drawing book. Those are the sort of things. I think gender has nothing to do with it, so any girls out there, please apply straight away. Culture is one for sure. An engineer is going to lead. Therefore, you have to be aware of the rigour of engineering. You can't just say near enough is good enough. That's just not a possibility. You have to be aware, in our case, of the formal systems we have. A graduate engineer also too has to be a people person. In a small business like ours, you talk to the customer and maybe not everything's going right. Your job is 9 weeks overdue. So you've got to understand, have a solution for the customer, talk to them sympathetically, never be angry, and help resolve that through. Customer relations is a big part of our engineers' task. You've got to be up to date. You've got to professionally extend yourself as well too, find out about new stuff all the time. This is an extremely rapidly changing field. You absolutely, totally, in our sort of business in any case, do not want to be someone who says, I'm an engineer and I write this and the people down the factory do it. We actually road test our engineers. When we have an interview, they come in and they work in the factory. If the factory guys don't like them, we don't hire them. It's handy to have good results, but good results aren't everything. It's been my practical experience that a great academic result doesn't necessarily result in a great engineer. You can have people who've got okay results and who make excellent engineers because they understand what engineering is, rather than they did engineering but they really should have done medicine or maybe done shoe salesman. They're not really in the right field. And there's one thing you really, really need to have, and that is good maths skills. Maths is a straightforward kind of thing. Don't be frightened by it. Right? Everything relies on it. If we're designing something and if I don't calculate the wires correctly and the thing catches fire, that's a significant risk. The useful subjects to have, of course, would be physics and chem, the two maths. A language would be a good thing to have, mainly because another language gives you an ability to perhaps think a little bit more quickly. What's very useful too is to have a life outside that of purely of the school. We look and say if someone has a social involvement, then that means that they're more going to be able to look at things, so they're looking at people rather than as objects. I think that if you want to enter the engineering industry, knowing that you're not going to be able to sit at a desk and give commands, you're totally in the wrong job there. You may as well know what it is to work with people. You may as well have some handy skills. Have you ever used a saw before? Have you used an electric drill before? Can you fix your car? Can you change a tyre? Can you change a light globe? A tradesman is a marvellous occupation. It's a really marvellous occupation. You know, a good tradesman's work is like a work of art. You have properly run cable that looks like that, something that's spotlessly clean. You see that internationally, like, and you look and see, is ours as good as that? You know, what about the really nice way in which they lad is a work of art? So you've got to have the desire to want to do that. I think the first important thing is to actually contact a business. Several of our employees, our senior electrical engineer, was someone who wrote to us from La Trobe and said, hey, look, I wouldn't mind learning something about engineering, and you're engineers. And we happened to be employing at his stage one of his lecturers. If you want to enter the industry, you need to find out something about it. People like us and businesses like us, we would love to talk to people. We really would. Nobody's going to say no. Resume preparation, it depends on what job you're applying for. If you're applying for an apprentice or a trade assistant and so on, there are some little things we insist on. If you're applying for us as an engineer, we insist on more. So as an example, say we advertise on Seek, which we do quite regularly, and look at us. If you only send us a generic answer that think you've sent out to everybody else, we will score that badly. If you say, hey, I've always been interested in large battery charges and cathodic protection rectifiers, even if you don't know what they are, at least you've looked up, we will give you a positive score for that. So if you want the job, you've got to put a bit of care into it. So that therefore means, as I said, you've got to have your reply doesn't want to be just a pro forma reply, or we think this is just a pro forma candidate. Interview preparation, well, it's nice to know what our business does. It's best to be reasonably well presented. I know that might sound old-fashioned, but it actually is the case. Anything with a resume is good, especially if you have references. So if you say, well, you know, at my school or at my cricket club or something like that, they're references. And we would look super well at people who are involved in any sort of activity. It could be religious, it could be musical, it could be sport, it could be anything like that. Anything that shows that they're part of the society rather than they're just existing by themselves. What would deter me from an applicant? Well, first of all, as I said, those things, if they didn't get a name right, if they didn't show any attention to detail whatsoever, if they applied with a ludicrous sort of thing saying, well, I'm actually located in Nova Scotia in Canada, but I'm looking at a job in Australia. And well, you get that kind of thing, well, forget it, right? Another one that's that young people should avoid is saying first thing is, what will I earn? That tends to get people's back up because you think, oh, is their whole value getting a higher paid job, in which case they perhaps won't be particularly loyal, and that's a bad question to ask first. If you want to know, do your own research and find out. Lack of punctuality is a bad thing. If you say you're going to be there at 10, be there at 10. Actually, be there at 5 to 10. Because if you can't make it till 10:30 and there's something wrong, ring. But if you don't ring, or worse, if you're a no-show, you won't get another interview. We have a series of values we look for in an interview, and the higher up the position is, the more we drill down into those values. And the cultural values is one. We don't care about age. It has absolutely no opinion on us at all. We don't care about sex. We don't care about where you come from. We don't care about religion, politics. In fact, we have a total policy that these are no-ask questions. We do not care about them, and they don't affect what sort of engineer or trade you are. You're just a person, right?